Welcome to another episode of Worship Tech Tour featuring The Belonging Co. In this episode, you're going to get an in-depth look at the tracks rig and the keyboard rig that they're using for their worship band. Bringing us on this segment of the tour is Evan Fernald. He is the music director and in charge of all things tracks and keys. This episode of Worship Tech Tour is a bit different in that it's more uncut. I didn't really feel like it was necessary to splice and dice the footage I had of Evan explaining their rig because he did such a phenomenal job. Plus, I wanted you guys to experience what my team gets to experience when we go on these tech tours and we're just sitting in the room with them, standing by the gear, and they're just off the cuff explaining what they have. Evan does a phenomenal job in this video. I think you'll walk away with a ton of insights on how you could better leverage tools like Ableton Live for worship ministry. Take it away, Evan.
Well, welcome to Tracksland. Let's kind of just roll through the hardware first. We're running a 16-inch MacBook Pro. We use a Korg Nano control for controlling different elements of the session, volumes, filters. We'll talk a little bit more about that. As far as the hardware here goes, we're running a OWC Thunderbolt 3 hub. Everything runs into this in the rack, so we have a single cable running up to the MacBook Pro, keeps everything nice and tidy. Power, that's internet, that's connection to the interface, everything. Focusrite Claret 8 Pre is the interface we're running. We run 10 outputs. 6 of those are dedicated for the tracks. So it's basically 3 stereo lines. We run all like the melodic elements, tracks, guitars, keys, things like that. We run all the vocal elements down a stereo pair, and then all the percussion loops elements down a stereo pair. Run click and guide. We do run time code on some songs, not everything. It's usually the faster songs where there's some lighting sequences that are kind of pre-programmed, or for some special songs every now and again. We also run a line for sidechain click that runs out to Keysland. So any of the guys that are running like sidechain synth patches can kind of get that click and make sure it's all synced in with the track. So we run an iPad to control a lot of this. The app we're using is Touch OSC, and it's just a virtual MIDI controller. We've built out a template that has a bunch of buttons that we can map to like our count off markers, all the song markers throughout the song. So if we need to jump around, repeat verses, choruses, things like that, we can do all that with the iPad. We also have buttons for previous and next markers. We can just kind of manually, jump to any marker. One thing that's a little bit unique, I think, is we have some buttons that are mapped to the quantization settings in Ableton, so that when we get to the end of a song, there's a lot of times where we're just flowing. We're just kind of off map, we're not really in a particular arrangement. And so once we hit that point, we take the accent out of the click. So it's an unaccented click. And as the band's flowing, the worship leader's flowing, they might get on a new downbeat. And so we needed to be able to make Ableton match back up with where the band is at instead of forcing the band to like recover or like wait for a beat or anything like that. So with those settings, we can on the fly toggle the quantization settings in Ableton, refire like a click marker to basically get Ableton on the new one, matching the downbeat of the band, and then from there we can jump back into the tracks if we need to, if the moment calls for it. So really tried to kind of be intentional in how we program that to allow for spontaneity and flow, because that's a really big part of what we do here. We didn't want this to dictate what's happening in the moment. We want this to be able to follow the moment. That's kind of how that's set up and programmed. The session itself, we're running Ableton 10 standard, and we run all the tracks in arrangement view, and we have a master session that has all the songs that we have tracks for. That's always our starting point, and then whenever we're building the set out for the week, we'll usually pull out any songs that we don't need for that set, with the exception of maybe some of the faster celebration songs that, like, it could be a moment at the end of service that, our pastor, whoever's leading the moment, goes, hey, it feels like we need to like go out on, a big moment. Let's bust into, a song that we really want the track support on. It's in the session ready to go. So those never come out. Otherwise, all the other maybe worship songs that aren't in the set do get pulled out to try and keep the set at a more manageable size so we don't overwhelm the computer, because it is a lot. We've got a lot of songs. I would say probably close to 30 songs, which I'm sure there's master scenes out there that have way more than that, but we run individual stems on most of them. So there's not a ton that are like mixed down to just a stereo. So those are all like, each song could be upwards of 12 stems per song. So that times, 20, 30 songs is a lot of content for a master session. So routing stays the same, all the MIDI mappings to the nano control, some of the main transport controls that are mapped to the iPad, all that stays the same. You don't have to rebuild that on a weekly basis. You can just, boom, open it up, pull out what you don't need, hit save, and you're good to go. Yeah, so that is something that's actually a little bit newer. It was pretty standard that the keys player, who's also the MD, would also be running tracks, which that was kind of normal for our crew, but it is a lot to have one guy doing. So we have recently built out a tracks team. So for the most part, it lives down here now. There's a few times that we will have to bring it back out and run it from on stage, but for the most part, it lives down here now. One quick little note on the click that just makes for kind of a seamless experience for the band is that we've actually sampled. We got a DB90 here as well as just kind of a backup metronome. We run that in, again, flow moments where maybe we're going into a song that was unplanned. We don't really have a click set up ahead of time in Ableton for it, or it's just in the moment we need the click to come in where the band's already at, even if they're at an odd tempo. So we can just tap in on the DB90, hit go. You can kind of speed up, slow down, even in moments where you kind of want it to maybe slow down just a little bit. It's really easy to do on the DB90. But for seamless audio for the band, we actually sampled the DB90. So it's the same click tone in Ableton. So whether you're running the Ableton click or the DB90, it sounds the same for the band. So they can't tell the difference if we switch back and forth. It's not like they're all of a sudden getting a new click tone run into their ears. So small thing, but being on ears, it does make a difference when you just kind of have that continuity. So one thing that's different on the tracks as well is we run, in addition to having volume control, we run filters on all the output buses. So they're all low-pass filters that are sweepable and mapped to one of these upper knobs. So a lot of times when we're in a flow moment, if we're reintroducing tracks, we've finished the song, we're kind of vamping, flowing, and we want to bring it back in, rebuild a bridge or whatever. The markers let us get it there, and then bringing something back in with a filter, we just felt was a kind of a musical way to bring tracks back in. Any keyboard players that are used to playing pads know you can take a really big, huge, bright pad, filter it down, make it a really dark, warm pad. And really wanted to approach this as another band member and try to make tracks. I mean, you're providing a lot of musical support to the moment, so trying to make this as musical as possible. Just a simple thing like adding filter control on your output buses really helps be able to bring tracks in and out in a musical way, more so than just like fading out. So that's really been working out well for us. It feels really great for those moments. I'm primarily responsible for this. So it's like the playback crew. I'm kind of responsible for training and getting them going. So if it's somebody new, I'll probably put myself down here, have them kind of with me for a weekend, kind of show them how everything goes, and then like flip-flop, have them run it another weekend, and I'll be kind of here as kind of support. But I do a lot back and forth. I'll be playing a lot too. So this is a Keys World here. So we run the Nord Stage 2 EX. A lot of the pianos that you'll hear is actually the Nord pianos. It's either typically the Amber upright model or one of the Grands. I think the one that we use is the Grand Imperial. So it's either going to be one of those two. We do have a lot of guys that run some additional software. So you might hear some Keyscape pianos, the Wing upright, just the Yamaha C7. Fantastic pianos. So the pads, there's also a variety. We kind of like that a lot of our guys have just some really great sounds on their own. So we try and let those voices kind of be unique to the player. So we let them bring their rigs. Whatever pads they have is kind of what they run. So there's going to be a variety on that. This is my setup, which I run Omnisphere, a couple of Omnisphere layers combined with a sample-based pad coming out of the Nord. So it's a combination of kind of 3 layers plus some reverbs that are the pad that I run. We do split out the outputs out of the Nord. So all the pianos come out outputs 1 and 2. The synth section, all the pads come out 3, 4. We run 3 stereo keys lines, so kind of the same type of split. Keys 1 is all the pianos. Keys 2 is all the pads that are actually being played. And then we run a dedicated stereo line for any drones so that they can actually mix that separately in the house. Sometimes it's actually hard in the ears to kind of feel how that's balanced. So it lets them really be able to make sure we're not just blasting out a drone in the house and can't actually hear what we're playing. So also use an iPad out here for a couple things. One, It actually has a lot of kind of the MD notes. Again, keyboard players are our MDs as well, and so some song notes. It has the same basic layout which we saw on tracks, which also allows us, like I mentioned, whenever we do have to come out here and run tracks from on stage, we're actually able to control both the keys rig and the tracks rig from one iPad. So run that into an iConnect MIDI 4 Plus, which is a fantastic piece of hardware. That lets one iPad talk to multiple computers, and so we're able to, again, fire those tracks, jump around, flow, just like we would if we were side stage. Also, same with the Nano Control. This is also running into the iConnect, so it can control volumes, pads, volumes and filters on the keys rig, as well as volume and filter control on the tracks. Some additional faders for like delay levels, reverb levels, sidechain mix levels. So if that sidechain click's coming in, I can decide how much of it I want, how hard I want it to be hitting that synth. This particular setup is running the same interface, the Claret 8 Pre. Again, a variety there with our guys. Some of the guys are running the Apollo interfaces. Some Motu interfaces in there as well. So there's also a mixture. We're pretty much split 50-50 between our players. Half the guys are running Ableton setups, other guys are running Mainstage. So those are the two predominant DAWs that you'll see on the keys rigs here. One last thing to note is we do send the MIDI from the Nord down to, there's an iConnect Mio XM that's tucked under the stage. That is set up a network MIDI connection back to our live stream room, where we can actually track the Nord MIDI along with the audio. So we're tracking everything, but that gives us the ability to, again, fix flubs if we wanted to actually, take a moment that happened in service and actually, put it out, do something with it. We actually have a lot more control over what was happening in the moment to be able to kind of edit and fix that up. So that's one thing that's worked really well. Again, the iConnect stuff is amazing, we love it. DI for all of our keys is down there as well. And then we have a second set of inputs up here for the tracks. When we do have to bring it out on stage, all they have is it's basically a macro button set up on the monitor console. They just push one button and it pulls from the stage inputs instead of the side stage inputs. So it's a very quick switch over if we need to bring tracks out up here.
I'm going to link all of the gear that Evan mentioned down below in the description of this video. Don't forget to check out the Belonging Co.'s website and their latest album, See the Light. Big thank you to the Belonging Co. and Evan for making this video possible. Be sure to leave a like and share this video with your friends in worship ministry if you learned something new today. And don't forget to subscribe to the Churchfront channel so you don't miss out on future episodes of Worship Tech Tour. See you next time.